Hi everyone. Welcome back to English for You. I'm Pat.
And I'm Mike.
So we're talking about typhoons again today. Day 2 of our article about the typhoons in Taiwan. And we learned yesterday that Taiwan is getting fewer typhoons than before. And since 2010, the average has dropped from 3.5 a year on average to around 2.5 a year on average. And in 2020, there weren't any typhoons at all. And in fact, I don't remember any real big ones in 2022 either. There were some tropical storms, maybe a few that missed Taiwan, but I don't think we got any making a big landfall on the coast like I remember from 10 or 12 years ago.
And that wasn't because COVID? Because the typhoons were staying away because of COVID?
Social distancing typhoons?
The typhoons didn't want to stay in a hotel for 7 days before when they came to the country?
Quarantine typhoons?
No,
it wasn't that.
Weather doesn't care about that stuff. No, it's probably because of climate change. I mean, we've been reading about climate change for years. Scientists have been forecasting it for years and also telling us it will have lots of effects. And we're seeing that in, how things are growing, how much water or rain falls in parts of the world, how, animals and fish and all sorts are being affected by this. So, of course, climate change will affect many things, including the number of typhoons we get each year in Taiwan. Now, the simple explanation is as temperatures rise, especially ocean water temperatures of the seas and oceans, as those temperatures rise, storms decline, or the number of storms decline. The storms might be powerful, but we certainly have fewer of them than ever before.
Yeah, you might think that it's good news that there are fewer typhoons, but if they're going to be more powerful, that's bad news. And that's not the only problem that Taiwan stands to face. We ended yesterday by saying Taiwan stands to face some challenges, and in today's article, we're going to learn just what they are. Let's read through.
Reading.
Taiwan must prepare for more extreme typhoons and dry weather. Available data suggests that in the future, if greenhouse gas emissions aren't lowered, Taiwan will continue to have fewer typhoons. By the end of the current century, the chances of a typhoon hitting Taiwan could go down by 40%. However, the typhoons and tropical storms that Taiwan does get will likely be much more severe and deadly. This is because there'll be more warm, wet air, which makes typhoons larger. Taiwan will also likely get much longer summers, with the number of days reaching 36 degrees Celsius or higher, increasing by 40%. There is also a chance that Taiwan could lose its winter altogether. What's more, between 2040 and 2060, most areas could see a big drop in the amount of spring rain they receive. When these trouble-causing factors combine, it's possible that they could lead to a shortage of water. This could make it difficult or even impossible for farmers to properly grow crops such as rice. Other industries that demand water, like Taiwan's semiconductor industry, could also be negatively affected. To prepare for the future, Taiwan may need to better manage its water-related resources and make changes to its farming industry.
All right, so we're talking about typhoons and how global climate change is affecting the number of typhoons and the strength of the typhoons that we get here in Taiwan. So available data, the article for today begins, says available data suggests that in the future, if greenhouse gas emissions aren't lowered, Taiwan will continue to have fewer typhoons. So basically, if we're going to look into the future and if we don't change anything, thing, like if we don't start getting rid of our gas cars and everyone starts switching to electric cars, for example, and things like that. So if we don't change anything that we're doing now, Taiwan will continue to have fewer typhoons. All right, so this trend of fewer, we're getting 2.5 a year now. Maybe 10 or 20 years from now, we'll be getting 1.5 or even less than 1 a year, 1 every 2 or 3 years. That's what the data suggests will happen if we don't change things. So data are basically facts, scientific information, stuff that you can rely on, knowledge that you can rely on. If you open up a dictionary, an encyclopedia, a science book, that will be full of data, full of facts. If you ask your friend their opinion on something, well, maybe they'll be giving you some information that's interesting, but it might not be data or facts because it isn't backed up with science and research and tests and stuff like that. But when scientists want to make discoveries and learn things, they need to collect the data and then start thinking about what the data shows or tells or explains. For example, we don't have a lot of good data about planets outside of our solar system. It's very true. We know a fair amount about, say, Mars or Venus or somewhere, but about planets that are millions and millions of miles or even light years away, we don't know much. We don't have a lot of data.
Data is one of those odd words where it's technically the plural. We have datum is the singular, but it's almost never used as datum. We almost always say data, and even though it's technically a plural noun, we often give it the singular verb. The data isn't very reliable, that kind of thing.
But people will say are, and then you can also say data.
Yes.
Some people say data instead of data.
So what we've got here in the article is saying that greenhouse gas emissions need to be lowered. When we're talking about an emission, we're talking about the product of something usually in the form of gas or radiation and which often ends up in the air. Specifically talking about greenhouse gas emissions, we're talking about the kind of gases that will go into the atmosphere and make the air hotter, will contribute to climate change, global warming, and so on. So greenhouse gas emissions are things like carbon dioxide, especially produced by factories, cars, burning jet fuel for planes, that kind of stuff.
Okay. And we also have this word lower. This is a verb, and you'll remember from yesterday we had a verb decrease. To go down in number, well, to lower, used this way, is pretty much the same. To go down in number, value, strength, the amount, how much of something. To decrease kind of has the same idea. For example, the bad weather this weekend will definitely lower the number of people who go to the park. Could I say it will definitely decrease the number of people? Absolutely. Because in this way, the way we're using it here, lower and decrease, mean about the same thing, to go from a bigger number down to a smaller or lower number.
So the article then says, by the end of the current century, the chances of a typhoon hitting Taiwan could go down by 40%. And we have yet another phrasal verb here with the same meaning as lower, decline, reduce, and so on. Decrease. Go down just means be reduced in this case. Go down by 40%, they will be 40% lower. The chances of a typhoon hitting will be 40% lower than they were right now.
Now that is kind of a good thing, but remember, fewer storms, but stronger storms. That's what the scientists told us. However, this is where we get to the news. It could also say unfortunately, because it's bad news. However, the typhoons and tropical storms that Taiwan does get will likely be much more severe and deadly. So instead of having 3 or 4 typhoons a year where 1 or 2 people might get hurt, we might have 1 or 2 storms every year or 2, but dozens or hundreds of people might get hurt because the storms will bring a lot more rain and a lot stronger winds. They will be more severe and more deadly. And of course, when we talk about typhoons, these are a type of tropical storm, but they're the most powerful type of tropical storm. When we get a lot of rain and some wind, but it doesn't have a name, they might be calling it 35W or something, that could be a tropical storm. Once the winds and the rain get big enough, then they give it a name like Morakot or something like that, and it becomes a typhoon. But these storms are all happening in this part of the world, in the tropical areas of the world. Now, when we use this word tropical as an adjective, or the tropics to use the noun, we're talking about that middle central band of the warmest part of the world. It's slightly above zero, the equator, and also below. The Tropic of Cancer is in the north, and that actually runs through Taiwan. It's an imaginary line on a map, but it can affect temperatures and lots of other things in the world. But it's not something you'll actually see on the ground. You might see a sign somewhere around
East
Tainan.
Coast, between Hualien and Tainan. I've driven past it a few times.
Okay, there you go. Hualien and Tainan on opposite sides, but in the sort of the
Taidong,
the central part of Taiwan,
on the
that
Eastern
would be
Highway.
The Tropic of Cancer, which runs through Taiwan and, of course, will continue through other parts of the world on the same latitude. And, of course, down south, below the equator, we have the Tropic of Capricorn. And so the area above the Tropic of Capricorn and below Cancer are called the tropics. And as I said, this is the warmest, wettest, hottest part of the world, where also the sun will rise and set at the most regular hours, unlike the high north and south. For example, you can expect tropical temperatures through most parts of Central and South America, because most parts of that area of the world are in the tropics.
And we said that these tropical storms could be more severe. Severe means great and intense, but we almost always use this in a negative way to mean worse. We don't say, wow, I got a severe grade on my test, and that was a good grade. No, you'd say, I got a severe scolding from my parents. After getting a bad grade, they gave you a really tough time. It's a negative word. When we talk about severe weather, we mean weather that is extremely unpleasant and likely to cause harm or damage.
And it says this is because. Why will these storms be more severe and deadly, more powerful? Well, this is because there'll be more warm, wet air, which makes typhoons larger. So interestingly, with this warm, wet air, we will get fewer of these storms, but when that air gets together and organizes itself into a typhoon, wow, it'll really pack a punch. It will be very strong and more deadlier than in the past.
So this isn't the only change we can expect to happen. The article says Taiwan will also likely get much longer summers, with the number of days reaching 36 degrees Celsius or higher increasing by 40%. So we're going to get longer, hotter summers with days where it's really painfully hot. That's likely to happen in the future with, maybe if one summer we've got 40 days of very hot weather, it goes up to like 50 or 60 the next year.
That is very dangerous, really. And as we experience warmer summers, we'll also be experiencing warmer winters. And the article says there's also a chance that Taiwan could lose its winter altogether. So we wouldn't get any cold days in the, January, that time of year. Everything would be sort of spring-like temperatures, which is okay, but it could have lots of other effects which might not be okay.
Yeah, here's one of the big ones. The article says, what's more, between 2040 and 2060, so again, we're forecasting the future, most areas could see a big drop in the amount of spring rain they receive. Yeah, this kind of happened a year or so ago when we had the big droughts. The people in Taichung had to keep turning their water off, that kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. In Taipei, too, maybe 10 years ago, I remember we couldn't take showers for 2 or 3 days of the week in the middle of summer. It wasn't fun. And that could be what happens. And those sorts of things will become more common. Maybe even like every year we'll have periods where there'll be very little water. As the article says, when these trouble-causing factors combined, higher temperatures, less rain, all of that kind of stuff, shorter winters, when these trouble-causing causing factors combine, it's possible that they could lead to a shortage of water. A shortage of water leads to dry lakes and rivers and lots of problems, both for people in the cities showering, but actually more importantly to farmers trying to water their fields and water their crop, their livestock. They give water to their cows and chickens and stuff.
So in that sentence, we use today's language in focus, which is a compound adjective using either a V-ing or a PP ending. We had trouble causing as our example. Now, there are ways we can turn verbs and nouns into descriptive words and descriptive terms by taking trouble, like that's a noun, and cause, that's a verb, but put together, trouble causing with the ing ending, that makes it a descriptive adjective. Now, these kind of adjectives are pretty much always hyphenated. They do come in different forms, and they have different meanings depending on the verb ending. Words with a V-ing ending, like trouble causing, mean the description applies right now. These factors cause trouble now. The lack of rain, the hotter summers, the colder winters, that is causing trouble. That will cause trouble. You could also say, the heartwarming moment in the movie brought a smile to my face. So this heartwarming moment, it's acting on you now. It warms your heart when you see it. However, when we use the PP, the past participle verb ending for these kind of adjectives, we mean that the action has already taken place or that it's a passive construct. For example, this is a solar-powered car, meaning the car is powered by the sun. Again, we've got solar, and then which is either a noun or an adjective, and power as a verb also could be a noun. Here it's the verb form solar-powered, powered by the sun.
Okay, and one of the biggest things that could be one of the biggest types of trouble that we could see caused by this global warming is a shortage of water. A shortage, this is a noun, the word shortage, is basically a lack of something. You don't have enough of something probably quite important that you need. A shortage of money means you can't afford to buy that thing or do that thing that you want to do. A shortage of food means, well, you could be in trouble, but you should at least go to the store and buy some food if you can, because you don't have enough food. And a shortage of water, again, not enough water, less than you need to clean, cook, water your plants and, give water to your cows or whatever it is. If we're talking about the weather, there's actually a term for a shortage of water. It's a drought, D-R-O-U-G-H-T. This is when an area isn't getting enough rainfall, probably for months or even years. There's been a drought in California and in parts of the southern U.S. like Texas for many years, which is why we see big forest fires there and things like that. So a shortage of water from the weather is a drought, and that, of course, is something we're seeing more of because of global warming. So we could even be getting droughts here in Taiwan.
And as Mike has already mentioned, the article says this could make it difficult or even impossible for farmers to properly grow crops such as rice.
Ooh, rice needs a lot of water.
It does. It grows in these wet kind of fields called paddy fields or rice fields.
Right.
So a crop is something that is grown by farmers for harvesting. We could talk about fruit crops, we could talk about grain, we could talk about different flowers being used for something. If you're growing it in order to cut it down and then sell it as food or something, it is a crop. And we generally think of large fields, big areas of trees or plants that are all grown in one big lot. For example, we might say, Old Man Miller's apple orchards had quite a fine crop this year. Much bigger than last year, so he grew a lot of apples.
Okay, but again, that's only for things you grow from the ground. We wouldn't call the chickens or pigs or cows on the farm a crop. That's livestock, so that's a different term. All right, back to the article. Other industries that demand water. So there are other businesses or industries that demand water, that need water, and we're not talking like a little bit of water, a lot of water. So it's not just farmers who will be affected. Other industries that demand water, like Taiwan's semiconductor industry could also be negatively affected. Of course, Taiwan's semiconductor industry, the chip fabrication, the chip plants and factories down there in Hsinchu, especially like, TSMC, making all those microchips for the cars, toys, phones, all the gadgets that we need. It takes a lot of water, apparently, to make a little microchip. You might not imagine it, you might not know it, but it's true. So they need water too. It's not just the farmers. In fact, they demand water. When you demand something, you say, I need this thing in a very strong and forceful way. We can also use it not actually speaking, like someone demands to see the manager or demands that you call the police. They're saying, you must do this for me. We can also talk about something that's not alive, like a business demanding a lot of your time. It needs a lot of your time. It requires something. This is what is necessary for it to be successful. So the chip-making business, the semiconductor industry in Taiwan needs a lot of water. Demands it. For example, becoming a chess grandmaster demands intelligence along with thousands of hours of study and practice. You need to be smart and you need to work hard if you want to become one of the world's best chess players.
So as Mike mentioned, when we talk about semiconductors, we mean these important chips in computers and other electronics. A semiconductor is a material that conducts electricity some of the time, but only under certain circumstances. In other words, you can switch it on and switch it off. And as you imagine, that makes it a pretty important part of any kind of electronics. Taiwan supplies the world with a lot of its semiconductors. And so if that industry struggles for water, then that's going to be a big problem for electronic companies around the world.
Absolutely. So to prepare for the future, Taiwan may need to better manage its water-related resources and make changes to its farming industry. So this is going to take a big effort by both the people of Taiwan, the government of Taiwan, and the businesses that work in Taiwan. We're all going to have to do something to manage our water-related resources, basically to make sure we don't run out of water. We can also, of course, make changes to the farming industry, maybe grow different crops or grow them in a different way so that they don't require so much water.
Yeah, water-related is another one of those compound adjectives we looked at earlier. So this has got the ed form at the end, so it's a passive one, and it just means things that are related to water. It involves water in some way.
And a resource is something that is there to be used, and there's probably a limited amount of it. It's not something you can just have as much as you want whenever you want. Your time is a resource. You can spend your time during the day doing something useful, something good for yourself. You can waste your time. You can do nothing with your time. But once it's gone, once you've used that day, those hours of that day up, you can't get them back. We also talk about things in the earth, oil, coal, the wood from trees as resources, the things that will run out. And then, of course, there are those renewable resources like sun power, wave power, wind power, things that won't run out. But a resource, whether it's something used to make energy like oil or wind, or something that you have like your energy, your time, those are all things that you can use up in various ways, but be careful because you might run out of it. For example, oil is a limited resource and the world will run out of it someday. We will get all of the oil out of the ground that there is to get, so we need to think about the future.
Yeah, we'll leave you with that rather kind of troubling message. Save water, conserve water, be prepared for extreme weather in the future, and we'll move on now to our For You Chat question.
For You Chat.
So today's question is, what are some things people can do to save water?
That's a good question. Take a shower instead of a bath.
Yep.
Take fast, quick showers. I would say that's a good thing to do. I try to watch how I use water in the kitchen, too. I try to turn it on and off if I'm washing things, only use it when I'm rinsing things or making bubbles with my soap. It's very easy to just kind of let the water run while you're doing something in the kitchen, but I definitely try not to do that. So I think I do as much as I can around the house. I don't own a big computer factory or a farm. I don't play golf. Golf is very bad for water.
That's true.
It takes a lot of water to keep a golf course looking green and healthy. And I know my mother certainly and my sister, I believe, they've stopped having a grass lawn.
Okay.
A lot of people like having a grass lawn in front of their house. Both my mother and my sister, partly because they're lazy and they don't want to cut the grass, but they've kind of gone with that more natural rocks and a few plants, which takes a lot less water. So you can make some choices like that too.
Yeah, there are things you can do to recycle water. If you have dehumidifiers in your home to kind of suck the water out of a bathroom after a shower.
That in the toilet?
Yeah, reuse it in the toilet. You could water plants with it. There are other, sure, maybe you don't want to drink it, but there are lots of other things you could do with that water.
Yeah.
And yeah, there are more examples like that. You just think, there are other ways I could just use that instead of just pouring it away.
I was actually thinking of that the other day because I was thinking I should pour this into the toilet, and I do sometimes reuse that dehumidifier water, but it's kind of a pain to lift the top off. I think someone in the toilet business should make a top for a toilet with a little door.
A built-in dehumidifier would be.
Or just even a little door that you could close so you don't have to lift the whole thing off. I would open the door, pour in the water, close the door. The water wouldn't disappear. It would stay there and it would be much easier. But in Japan, they have those wonderful sinks that run in to the back of the toilet. So you can wash your hands and then use that same, I think they call it gray water, not quite clean.
But it'll do the job.
It'll do the job to flush a toilet. So yeah, there are other ways that businesses, not just in the computer or farming, but even in how we build bathrooms in the future, where we could do great things to save lots of water.
That's all the time we have for today. Thanks for listening, everyone. For English for You, I'm Pat.
And I'm Mike.
We'll talk to you again soon. Bye-bye.
Bye. Vocabulary Review.
Data. Carrie's job is entering data that's written on paper into a computer program. Lower. Jack lost a lot of weight after lowering the amount of sugar in his diet. Tropical. Because this is a tropical island, it often rains here and it's very hot. Crop. Many crops are grown here in Taiwan, such as sugar, certain fruits, and tea. Demand. It's not easy to look after babies because they demand a lot of attention. Resource. Earth is running out of resources, so we need to use as little energy as possible.
智慧小补帖
Emission. Severe. Shortage.
以上节目是由活用空中美语制作，活用空中美语杂志，请洽询全国各大书店。如欲索取试听教材，请来电02-2364-4000 02-2364-4000，或上网查询，网址是 www.english4u.net www.english4u.net